It might not be a popular opinion in America, but voting for Donald Trump is like signing your own kid's death certificate. Now, that might sound extreme, I know, but I'm not even talking about the fact that firearms are the number one cause of death of children in the USA. I'm talking about the fact that Trump and MAGA Republicans are the political party that doesn't believe in climate change. They literally say it's a hoax created by the Democrats.
I'm not denying climate change, but it could very well go back. We're talking about over millions of years. They say that we had hurricanes that were far worse than what we just had with Michael.
Who says that? They say. You mean
well, people say that in the...
Yeah, but what about the scientists who say it's worse than ever?
You'd have to show me the scientists because they have a very big political agenda.
Now, obviously, there's a range of important issues that might sway your vote, not least a woman's right to choose. But it's clear to me that if you believe in the future of humanity, both in the USA and around the world, you need to be supporting a party and leader that recognizes the existential threat of the climate crisis.
It'll start getting cooler. You just watch.
I wish science agreed with you.
Well, I don't think science knows, actually.
The world is on pace to hit 3.1 degrees Celsius since pre-industrial times. But if nations somehow do all of what they promised in targets they submitted to the United Nations, that warming could be limited to 2.6 degrees. Trump pulled the US out of the Paris Climate Accord and will do so again if he's re-elected. The unnatural disaster in Spain, Europe's deadliest flash floods in at least half a century, is evidence of two undeniable truths. The human-caused climate crisis is only just starting to pick up ferocity, and we need to quickly kill the fossil fuel industry before it kills us. Now, of course, there's always been floods. While local factors, atmospheric, geographic, economic and political, contribute to the impact, it is the global physics of a fossil fuel destabilized world that is loading the dice toward disaster. Nobody can say that we weren't warned. 32 years have passed since governments agreed to tackle climate concerns at the first Earth Summit, and 9 years since the Paris Agreement to limit global heating to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. Yet global temperatures continue to hit record highs and emissions are rising faster than the average for the past decade. We're living in a time of unwelcome climate superlatives. The hottest 2 years in the world's recorded history, the deadliest fire in the US, the biggest fire in Europe, the biggest fire in Canada, the worst drought in the Amazon rainforest. The list goes on. And this is just the start. As long as people pump gas into the atmosphere, such records will be broken with increasing frequency until worst ever becomes our default explanation. But we should not let our baselines shift so easily. These are not isolated cases. They're part of a disturbing pattern that has been predicted by scientists and the United Nations. The cause is clear, and so is the remedy. The UN seems to be running out of vocabulary to describe how serious the danger is. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has declared code red for humanity. UN Executive Climate Secretary Simon Steele has warned we have 2 years to save the world, yet the agenda is being set by those who want to expand fossil fuel production. Last year, the hottest year on record, the average person experienced 50 more days of dangerous temperatures than they would have without climate change, according to the Lancet Countdown, an annual report released last week based on work by 122 experts, including the WHO. The report was released as heat waves, fire, hurricanes, droughts and floods have continued in full force this year. Large oil and gas companies, which have been posting record profits, have increased fossil fuel production since last year, the report said. Many countries doled out new subsidies to fossil fuels to counteract soaring oil and gas prices after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Climate change is also making food more unreliable, the authors warned. With up to 48% of the world's land area facing extreme drought conditions last year, the researchers said around 151 million more people will be experiencing food insecurity as a result. The devastations of Hurricanes Helene and Milton is almost indescribable. Businesses and infrastructure have been destroyed, people are in hospital, and many have been forced out of their homes. At a time when the nation should be united to prepare, respond, and recover from these storms, communities are being flooded with misinformation, disinformation, and outright lies for political purposes. Some elected voices have even promoted bizarre conspiracy theories implying that storms have been created by the government, and the Republican ticket for president has lied about the availability of disaster relief. But when the floods recede and the rebuilding begins in earnest, we must also wrestle with the reality that stronger, more frequent hurricanes are the byproducts of climate change, and we need leadership that faces this truth instead of lying about it. The climate crisis is not, as Donald Trump would have you believe, a hoax. The science is unequivocal, and coastal communities everywhere need us to solve the crisis, or each and every year to come will only be more dangerous for our fellow Americans. Because climate change is human-made, so are its solutions. We can reduce emissions and create good jobs and clean energy at the same time. And that is why the Biden-Harris administration has invested nearly $7 billion in FEMA to help communities proactively reduce their vulnerability to climate-fueled events. The Vice President's support for clean energy, including offshore wind, is helping to create jobs that make us a global leader in renewable energy innovation. Now, whilst the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill, contains a number of new programs targeted at mitigating the impacts of climate change and increasing the resilience of the surface transportation system, in my opinion, it barely scratches the surface of what needs to be done. Personally, I'd like to see the Defense Production Act creating a countrywide effort to build solar farms and wind turbines, blanketing the country with sources of clean, renewable energy so that we can reduce our usage of fossil fuels down to net zero. Republicans are always complaining about gas prices and blaming Democrats, and yet they shun the solutions. Electric vehicles could all be powered by the sun. We have the knowledge and the technology, it's just the intent that is missing. And any negative headlines you've read about EVs invariably come from the lobbyists in the fossil fuel industry. They spread false propaganda in the same way they did to kill the first electric cars in the 1950s, right through to General Motors killing their own EV1 electric car program in 2001 because they thought it wasn't profitable enough. Oil companies are concerned about losing their monopoly on transportation fuel. The fossil fuel lobby continues to work to end the EV movement. For example, oil-backed groups are challenging plans to expand charging infrastructure. Donald Trump doesn't understand climate change. He thinks it's about clean air and clean water, but he fails to recognize the danger of global temperatures. He has a vendetta about wind turbines, which he foolishly calls windmills, because he lost a legal case about the location of a wind farm near his golf course in Scotland. He lies to his supporters, claiming they kill birds and the noise gives you cancer. Meanwhile, the climate crisis rages on. The United States experienced 28 weather and climate disasters last year that each cost at least $1 billion, an all-time record. The total damages from these disasters were at least $92.9 billion. The disasters also killed at least 5,500 people since 2017. We need a president and an administration who takes climate change seriously. We've known about the risks for decades, and of course we've left it too late. But something is better than nothing. If you worry about immigration now, imagine what it'll be like as the planet becomes less tolerable. Some researchers project that drought-driven migration could triple this century if international efforts fail to address climate change. The International Displacement Monitoring Center predicts that 1.2 billion people could be displaced globally by 2050 due to climate change and natural disasters. The US is the second most polluting country on the planet. We should be leading the world with our switch to renewable energy. If you had solar panels on your roof and consequently had no electric bill, wouldn't that be better for you? And if you charged your car at home courtesy of the power of the sun for free, wouldn't that be better than paying gas? Why would anyone not want to save money and save the planet at the same time? Kamala Harris and the Democrats are the only political party that understands what is at stake. Trump is in bed with the energy sector. He wants to drill, baby, drill, which translates to pollute, baby, pollute. There's only one choice to make in this election. Vote for our children's future and our planet's future. After all, it's the only place we have to live. I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show with Midas Touch.